This isn't any regular heat. This is nuclear heat. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. Bringing you the latest from the Square Circle on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Here is your host, Jake Bakovic.
Hello and welcome to a very special edition of Nuclear Heat, our WWE Week in Review show. Today we're going to expand the WWE to back in time, a little bit back to WCW, one of our other favorite promotions, obviously, that unfortunately did not make it past the Monday Night Wars. WF at the time, of course, ultimately took over WCW, and so you had the invasion angle and all that. One of the best times really in wrestling, but unfortunately WCW had to fall to make that happen. But in any case, a very special guest here today. We're going to have David Penzer, who was the ring announcer for WCW pretty much from 1993 to 2001. He did some ring announcing as well with TNA. So it'll be very exciting to have him as our guest. And reason he's coming on, he's got a new book. So if you want to check it out, if you are like me, a big fan of WCW, this is kind of a view from ringside, I suppose, which is why it is appropriately titled Sitting Ringside Volume 1. David Penzer, he will be with me in just a few minutes here, and we will talk about his time in WCW, the book. I kind of want to get his thoughts on Samantha Irvin and some of the stuff that she's been doing. Of course, notably at WrestleMania, she kind of broke down in tears as she was trying to announce Cody Rhodes the winner. Different thoughts around the internet, around the wrestling community about that. I'd like to hear what David Penzer has to think. So, well, again, we'll talk to him in just a few minutes. But for now, it is Nuclear Heat. We usually go through the week in review, and I usually have Nuclear Heat contributor Augie Pena by my side. Unfortunately, Augie is dealing with a bit of a headache today, so he is going to go ahead and take the day off, and therefore it's going to be maybe an abbreviated Nuclear Heat, but again, maybe more focused on David Penzer and his new book, Sitting Ringside Volume 1. So we'll get to that here again in just a few minutes. I do want to get to my thoughts on WWE's week in wrestling, so that we can get to that quick. We usually start with SmackDown and get to Raw, and we'll do just that. SmackDown opened up with AJ Styles defeating LA Knight and becoming the number one contender for Cody Rhodes' title. A good first match for Cody Rhodes, as he will defend that at the next premium live event for the WWE Backlash. And it makes sense, right? This is the heel going to go up against your ultimate babyface and Cody Rhodes. If you would have had LA Knight against Cody Rhodes, would have been very interesting to see those fan bases clash a little bit. But typically, you're going to have a heel versus a face. And something that Damian Priest and Jey Uso even talked about last night on Raw is that, you know, sometimes at Backlash, after WrestleMania, after the big moment, you're not going to see too many people drop the title right away. So you kind of get into this space of, okay, we need some placeholders for the first feud, and then we can kind of build the legacy of each of these titles and the title reigns from the new winners from WrestleMania. And so that's what this one kind of feels like, right? AJ Styles maybe feels like the first one to be fed to Cody, because I can't imagine they went through 2 years of storytelling for Cody to finish the story, for him to lose to AJ Styles in his first title reign in his first match post that. So we don't expect to see that, but I think it is a good a name that you can sell. You can certainly get a good match out of these two. And it's interesting enough. The only thing that I would say is AJ Styles hasn't had a whole lot of momentum since his turn to being a heel. Basically lost the feud with LA Knight at WrestleMania. And then, to go back and have these two very same guys fight each other to get that opportunity to face Cody Rhodes, I don't love it, because it kind of undoes what you did at WrestleMania with LA Knight, getting a bit basically any momentum from beating AJ Styles is now taken away. AJ Styles has scoreboard, so maybe they'll continue that feud afterwards. I think I speak for everybody when I say I hope not, but it kind of interesting booking the way that they got there. Either way, I think AJ Styles, Cody Rhodes makes sense. Then we've got another new tag team title holders looking to defend their championship, A-Town Down Under, and WWE on SmackDown went with a 4-team tag team match to see who would earn that spot. And so you had the Street Profits, AOP, New Catch Republic, and Angel and Berto go at it. Again, I'm a big fan of AOP. I think, and just big guys in general. I think they could have done a little bit better helping them out. Ultimately, the Profits get the win. Street Profits get the win. Of course, they've been in Bobby Lashley's stable, so they will take on A-Town Down Under. Again, with these new titles, Street Profits kind of getting back into that kind of tag team realm. Since joining Bobby Lashley, it was kind of more of a stable rather than them off in their own tag team. This puts them back there. I don't know what the long-term thing, goal is for A-Town Down Under. I suppose it's to see what they can do with these belts, but I think the Street Profits in Bobby Lashley, the group could certainly use that win in those belts to really help finally put over that group, because it hasn't really, outside of shopping for suits, I don't really know what to say about Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. So maybe that could be something at least of interest to get going there. But I love the fact that what I can say about SmackDown and even Raw is a lot of these matches, one, moved on from WrestleMania season, and two, have stakes behind them. And anytime you can get stakes in these matches, I think it's better. Then they had Santos Escobar taking on Carlito. Not much to say here. Escobar gets the win. This was one time, Carlito wanted to come back, and this was the whole reason, basically, that Rey Mysterio kicked Escobar out of NWO. And so now that feud just feels kind of old. It was kind of a placeholder in SmackDown altogether. Escobar does get the win, which kind of helps him. He lost at WrestleMania. Kind of helps him get some steam back going for him and his group. And for Carlito, just feels like a little bit more could be done with his return. I know he's always kind of a upper mid-carder, but he feels like he's kind of at the bottom of the mid-card since his return. And LW, I think I said NWO earlier, LWO. And we'll see what they do with Carlito there. But again, not much to say there. Then you had the Solo Sikoa and Tonga bloody up KO, and they absolutely beat him up in the ring. Later in the night, we saw that ultimately, because KO came out bloody as heck, we found out that was because Tonga ran his car into KO. So you always like that in wrestling. Some backstage heat there. But I think where you're going with the bloodline, it's very interesting. I think this is kind of keeping you intrigued. Why they picked out KO, we'll have to wait and see. And it gives Kevin Owens something to do. Always good. He can be a great heel, by the way, if he ever wants to turn it, but does good with comedy, does good as the good guy. Obviously, has been linked to Sami Zayn for over a year now. So definitely one of the feuds that I'm more interested in. And then to finish up SmackDown on Friday night, you had Bayley and Naomi going for Bayley's title. So to immediately defend that, Bayley, of course, wanted Naomi to do this. This is a favor, I suppose. Ultimately, Tiffany Stratton breaks up that match. So you have a disqualification either way, and so no contest. Tiffany Stratton does her most beautiful moonsault onto Bayley and Naomi to finish up the night. So it looks like you're probably heading toward a three-way battle between them at the Premium Live event and Backlash. But absolutely great. We talked about it last week, how Stratton, I would have preferred her to beat Naomi, because I think Tiffany Stratton, Bayley's kind of fresh. Obviously, you have your face heel matchup there, and I just want to see Stratton get a push. I got my wish. I just had to wait a week longer. Let's go into Raw now. Damian Priest opening up his title reign here on Raw. Jey Uso actually came out to begin the segment on Raw, and came out basically trying to reestablish himself as the number one contender for Damian Priest title. Priest comes out. They kind of have a back and forth promo. Doesn't really get going until Jey Uso calls out Priest. And really, it's just kind of interesting, because it wasn't necessarily the best promo. I think at this time with Damian Priest, they kind of did this different look with him. Wasn't in his normal gear. Kind of, as a champion, often they dress him up to the nines, and he kind of came out and did that. But you just kind of want to see if the crowd is reacting. And I don't know, again, until Jey Uso used the B word, and that often gets the crowd going a little bit. It's somewhat overused in wrestling, but the live crowd always draws to it, obviously. Damian Priest and Jey Uso kind of, I felt a little bit awkward there. Again, this is the first feud for Damian Priest as a champion. So I think what they did on later in the night, kind of making him stand over his own heel faction, and look like the boss there certainly helped. But as far as this promo went, I thought it missed a little bit. Then you had Awesome Truth beat DIY. This was for the tag team champion, their first defense as new champions. I think that's the right move. Again, you don't want to really have anybody lose right after they get the win. DIY had been vying for that position. Tommaso Ciampa not interested in a handshake afterwards, so maybe see DIY go from face to heel in the next couple of weeks and maybe get another chance at that. I think that would be interesting as they get that going. Then we had Gunther announce that he is going to be entering the King of the Ring tournament, which he's got to be, and I don't know anybody else in the tournament. I think he's got to be the odds-on favorite. You got to wonder what they're going to do with Gunther coming out of his long Intercontinental title reign, and to put him in the King of the Ring, it feels, sometimes that feels kind of like a mid-card tournament with the names that they were flashing and the faces that they were showing up there. Looks like they're going to put quite a bit behind King of the Ring this year, so we will wait and see. But I think Gunther's got to be the favorite for that, and obviously they're starting the storytelling there. New Day came out. Xavier Woods, the reigning King of the Ring winner, started talking some trash, and it set up a New Day Imperium matchup. New Day got the win. Of course, we've seen New Day and Imperium, that being Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci. Of course, Gunther at ringside, not involved in the tag team match. We saw New Day and Imperium go at it for weeks, so this felt a little bit recycled until the new part of it. Ludwig Kaiser turns on Giovanni Vinci after the match and even goes to the back and gets Gunther's approval. So interesting to see what happens with Imperium. Of course, Ludwig Kaiser and Gunther were both the only two once Gunther made his debut in WWE, and then Giovanni Vinci came along. The only thing that you kind of worry about here is it seems like Ludwig Kaiser's character has evolved to where he could have a singles run. He could kind of do his own thing from here on out in WWE. If you put him as a singles wrestler, Giovanni Vinci, I don't know if that's the case. So, it depends on who you're protecting and what you're wanting to do here. But we'll see. If Kaiser's still with Gunther for an extended period of time, I don't think it hurts anything, but you just worry about Vinci being on his own. Is Kaiser, or after you get done with the Kaiser-Vinci feud, if Vinci's going to be able to find something. So we'll wait and see there. Then you had the Drew McIntyre promo where he comes out sitting down in the middle of the ring, calling out the crowd. Did a good job, always, of course, with his mind on CM Punk. Sheamus comes out and tells him he's got to get that off of his mind. After a bit of trash talk between the two, of course, longtime friends who put on banger after banger after banger. I thought it was interesting that WWE Drew McIntyre acknowledged that Sheamus did not come back in the best of shape. So he was, they said burger after burger after burger, and I think that got a kind of a quick kick out of the crowd. Certainly did for me. And then Sheamus takes on Shinsuke, Drew McIntyre ringside. McIntyre never gets involved, so I thought that was kind of interesting. And maybe you expected it to happen. But Shinsuke also kind of note, not really getting a whole lot going here. Let's go ahead, and we've got actually David Penzer joining us here. So just a few more matchups to get to at the end of our Raw segment, but we can go ahead and take a quick break if we can get David in here. All right, well, sounds good. David, thank you for joining us here on Nuclear Heat on 93.7 The Ticket. It is an honor, honestly, to have you. Obviously, as a broadcaster, I always like to pay a little bit more attention to the ring announcers myself. But for those that don't know, again, David Penzer joining us. He's got a new book out called Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. And this is from your time at WCW and TNA as the ring announcer. Primarily WCW covered in this book. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's my life story. Crazy ride of how I got in the wrestling business, where so many things had to go right that should have gone wrong. And then we end at the end of WCW going out of business, basically with me walking out of the power plant, for the last time after the WWE told us all what we were doing or not doing. And then while they were doing that in the power plant, took our laptops and shut our computers down. And said you could only go out once to your car, and you have to be escorted by a security person.
That is very interesting, because I was going to ask you as we have this. Oh, go ahead.
I just gave away the end of my book. I don't think I'm very good at this book stuff.
Hey, that's a good little insight for our interview at least. But yeah, and heck, I'll tell you what, with that kind of ending, I definitely want to know the story, and we'll get to a little bit of here. But of course, we're going to get more to that when we get the book, Sitting Ringside Volume 1. But what I was going to ask you throughout this interview is, interestingly enough, no work with WWE. Was it that kind of situation that soured any opportunity with WWE? Did they ever reach out to you?
Yeah, I had a meeting with John Laurinaitis and Jim Ross. They were going to run it as a regular, separate than WWE. That was the plan. That never happened, obviously. And if that happened, I was going to be the ring announcer. So I agreed to a job that I never came to be, and that's the story of at least the volume 1. Something cool I want to talk about, if you got a second, about this book, is it didn't start out as an autobiography. It started out as I found a bunch of old, really rare, never before seen formats and internal memos in WCW, and I was wanted to find a way. I came upon them when I was cleaning out my desk, and I wanted to find a way to get them out, and B, if I'm being honest, monetize them, because real estate isn't going nuts like it was a couple of years ago, and that's what I do for a living. So I put a copy of I took a picture of a Saturday night format, WCW Saturday Night from 1995, and I put it on Twitter, and I was like, would anybody be interested? And so Guy Evans, who did the Nitro book and Eric Bischoff's second autobiography, reached out to me and said, let's do a scrapbook. That's great stuff. People are going to love that stuff. Nobody's ever seen stuff like that before. Like the last Nitro format is in the book. I mean, I don't think it's been made public, made for public consumption. So originally it was going to be a scrapbook with me telling some stories like I am here, and selling the behind the scenes stuff. And I thought that was pretty cool. Get the not less. There's certain packages. You go to davidpenzerbook.com. It's also available on Amazon. But if you go to davidpenzerbook.com, there's packages where you could actually get, not in the book, it's still in the book that you get, but you could actually get the Nitro format or the Thunder format where David Arquette won the world title, and stuff like that. And, it'd be really cool to take the last Nitro format to WrestleCon and get Flair and Sting to sign autograph on their page, the last main event ever for WCW Monday Nitro. You can that up in your office. So that's what it turned out to be. And then I was told by Guy, your story's so compelling, and your thoughts on the ride of WCW and the people and the talent are so fun that we're going to do autobiography too. And I said, if you think so. I said, I think people will buy it for the formats, and hopefully they read my story and they dig it. But it just came out last Wednesday, but from the limited response I've gotten, people seem to really dig book. David Penzer book, davidpenzerbook.com.
Okay, yeah, so that's where you can get it again. Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. We're talking with David Penzer, WCW and TNA ring announcer for a long time. So let me just ask you, David, and we can get into that. I mean, when you drop names like, Sting and Flair and even in Arquette, that brings back a lot of WCW memories. And it is, I guess I can ask you just what you kind of think about AEW being the main competitor with WWE now. Does it, it's on, TNT and all that, and they borrow some of the stuff from WCW. Do you feel like it could be headed to a place, or is it a place where WCW was once competing with WWE on the Monday Night Wars?
I think so. And I think the world of those people and everybody there. I have a lot of good friends there, and I got to know Tony Khan pretty well for this brief time that he was coming to Nashville during the empty COVID tapings when Kenny Omega was the world champion. The guy would never let me buy him a drink. I was like, one of these days you're going to let me buy you a drink. And then I never saw him again. But it was just, not that, it was any big deal. It was just like a challenge. Anyway, he obviously feels like he wants to do more of a New Japan style of television. Where it's based around matches and match quality and dreams and stuff like that. and less, not totally not storyline based, but less storyline based. And that's a conscious decision. My son loves New Japan, loves AEW, doesn't watch WWE or A, but doesn't hate them either. Like some people take sides. It's like
Yeah.
It's the wrestling business. I guarantee you, there's nobody in any wrestling company, either one of those companies or TNA, that's saying, "Hey, I hope the other one's this is out of business, and I hope they fail because they have friends there, or the potential they might get a job there, or at least be able to negotiate a better offer, knowing that a place like AEW is there and taking guys, so and paying good money." So I can assure you that the fans want to take sides, but I can assure you obviously the wrestlers are passionate about the company they work for, and that's to be expected. But I'm assure you that they don't wish for the failure of anything. We saw that happen with WCW, which is what the book is all about, and that didn't go. How is it up in Omaha?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going pretty well. We're in Lincoln, Nebraska, pretty close to Omaha.
I googled the radio station and it showed something that was in Omaha, Lincoln, Nebraska. WCW ever come to Lincoln, Nebraska?
Say that again.
Did WCW ever come to Lincoln, Nebraska?
See, I'm at a age where I only saw WCW. I went to one WCW event, but I was like 8, so I don't remember. I don't think that was a TV. I think that was just a house show, but I don't know if they did or not.
I think we did for a house show, but I think that we didn't do. I'm pretty sure we didn't do TV there.
Yeah, that could be. I remember as a kid. One, and just telling my own story here, is that I was really excited to see Rey Mysterio Jr. at the time, and he had to cancel out. So I was glad to see him a couple years ago to kind of make up for one of my childhood things that didn't go right. But I did see Ric Flair and Sid Vicious that day. I don't know if you would remember. I don't know if you'd remember the specific day, but I think that's the event that I went to.
But yeah, Rey Mysterio changed the business. Basically single-handedly. I tell a story and I go into more depth about it. But when Rey Mysterio came, we all knew Rey Mysterio was coming in, but nobody really, for the most part, other than like Dean Malenko and Benoit and those guys, nobody had met Rey Mysterio. And I don't think anybody understood or were prepared for just how short and small he was. And you could hear murmurs, respect to Conan, nobody said anything, out loud, and you could hear murmurs, of, we didn't realize he was this small. And I'd tell you, I'd say 30 seconds into the match, nobody said another word ever about his size. I mean, he's transcended the business. He's changed the business for the better. He's an incredible talent. It's so cool that he's still doing what he's doing with all the wear and tear that he has, and that his son's doing it now. I remember Dominic when he was 3 years old, and so that's really cool. But I mean, this is what a great guy Rey Mysterio is. Him and Conan were doing WrestleCon, and there was like a line. You ever see have you ever been to like one of the wrestling conventions and the headliner has like a line like twice around the building? They got to like do once around the outside and then on the inside. They had a line like that. And I came up and I just to say hello to Conan and Ray, just shake their hand. And Ray said, "Stop, don't send any more," and sat there and had a 5-minute conversation with me about how much he missed the days and how much fun it was and what am I doing and all that stuff. So I mean, he didn't have to do that, but he's a great guy and a tremendous talent. Mad respect for Rey Mysterio. Wish you would have got to see him in Lincoln, Nebraska, but you got to see him down the road.
Yeah. I'm glad that I was able to. And you got so many stories, with so many people in this book, which is exciting. I was kind of looking up your profile and some of the memories of first of all, how about this Chris Jericho losing match where he went on a losing streak and did not like the fact that you're announcing the winner. So you got a little bit involved in into the wrestling, actually, not just as a ring announcer. Is that right?
Yeah, I used to ride with Chris and Eddie and those guys sometimes, and Chris had talked about doing that. He had talked to Terry Taylor about getting it approved, and we would talk about it. Most 99% of him because he's brilliant on stuff like that. But I'd say there might have been like maybe an idea or two that I might have come up with. I'm not taking credit for any of it, but it was cool to be involved in that creative process, which I got it to be towards the end of WCW officially in the creative meetings. But that was my first taste of it, and it was really cool for me as a wrestling fan since I was 11 years old, being absolutely addicted to the business. To be able to have a even if he would have said "Shut up, Penzer," that's a horrible everything I said, which I think he only said that 90% of the time. But even if he said that, just to be able to bounce ideas off somebody about something that was going to air on professional wrestling on TV was like so cool. And I will say this, it's my belief that he's the greatest of all time at different characters. He's taken so many different characters and gotten them over and made money with them. I can't think of anybody else who's changed their characters and made it work every freaking time. And different companies and stuff like that. So, and he thinks of the little things, the whole thing where he would tear off my tuxedo jacket, then he'd take my chair and he'd bang it against the post. So then the next week he'd come out with a new tuxedo jacket and a chair. Like, I don't have a chair. I'm sitting in a chair. I'm in a building filled with 5,000 chairs. But it's just little stuff like that nobody else would have thought of, that he thinks of, the whole clicking of the pen when he did the "you're on the list" thing. Most people would just do the "you're on the list." The whole clicking on the pen got a pop. I mean, it's just the small things he does that are so good. And he's gonna read the book, and he's gonna have me on his podcast. So I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, absolutely. We'll look forward to that as well. Once again, this is David Penzer with us here with his new book, Sitting Ringside, Volume 1, longtime WCW and TNA ring announcer. I did want to get to the ring announcing a little bit for you, because I do, at times, some of the ring announcers are supposed to be, I don't want to go as far as say like the stagehands that wear all black or anything, but they're not supposed to be necessarily part of the show. They just kind of talk. You wear that cummerbund and bow tie tuxedo. Was that something that you had to go to WCW about, or I mean, just to kind of stand out a little bit more? Did they want you to do that, or how did that kind of come about?
No, I found a really cool place in Fort Lauderdale where I lived at the time. Really cool, when I went to buy tuxedos and shirts, because I needed multiple tuxedos because of the schedule. Eventually, it became that I didn't even have time some weeks to take it to the dry cleaners. So a place that had really cool cummerbund and bow tie combos. And since, I really didn't have another way of, Ric Flair could wear a yellow robe with green tights and green boots. And, one day he could wear a red robe with white tights and white boots. I wore a tuxedo. So it just, nobody gave me the idea. I didn't ask anybody. It just kind of happened organically, which is how most cool things happen. And, I didn't like pick in advance which one I was going to wear, whatever I was feeling that night when I was getting for the show, I would put on. I was never doing it to try to stand out. I was just doing it to try to put, a little bit of my personality into my outfit.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of became something you're a little bit known for. Now, let me ask you this too: as a ring announcer, what kind of goes into that for the day? Like, you have note cards, preparation, rehearsal, all that sort of stuff. Like, what is the day of a ring announcer on the day of a show?
Well, it's pay-per-view is different than a TV taping, let me put it this way: a live show is different from a TV taping. When I was with Impact just until recently, we live pay-per-view, and then we do the next day we tape 2 episodes of Impact, so that wasn't live. But I mean, even going back to Nitro and Thunder, it was the same thing. Live TV, a lot of sound checks, a lot of making sure everything works. You can't do it again. You can't start it again once the clock turns to 8 o'clock or 7:30 for the pre-show, whatever. I mean, you got to go out there and do it. So it's a lot of preparation. Not as much for the TV tapings, mostly we were in the same city. But when they didn't have to take apart the stuff, so they just left everything the way it was. So it was more just go out and do it. But yeah, I write down notes, and I write down some of these, and I used to write down things to say to the audience when I first started 30 years ago. But you get used to that, and and that's really what I was. You didn't hear me very often on WCW. There's a reason for that I get into in the book in detail. But you didn't hear me that much. So my job really was to make sure the live crowd was involved, happy, knew what was coming up, was excited to see it, and get with it.
Interesting. Do you watch current WWE?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Bloodline storyline.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we can get to a little bit of that, and this actually kind of goes in that. I was just kind of wondering because it was maybe a moment at WrestleMania after the whole, Cody finishing the story where Samantha Irvin, who I'm a big fan of as a ring announcer, let her emotions kind of get into it. I mean, she was basically in tears as she was trying to announce the winner, and I think that kind of brought something a little bit extra. But I mean, I think other people would say that maybe it was a little unprofessional. I haven't heard anybody say that. I'm just kind of thinking as I heard it was kind of like, well, did they want her doing that? What was your kind of opinion when you heard her basically in tears announcing Cody Rhodes as the champ?
Well, I was in tears announcing Sting beat Ric Flair for the last Nitro match, but that's a whole different story that I don't talk about in the book. No, I'm kidding. I wasn't in tears, but Samantha Irvin has found something special. She's found a way, and I'm not talking about crying, and that's fine. I mean, be real. People like to see real, and if that's her real emotion, then God bless her. My big question was, does she not read the formats? But that's, I don't know the answer to that. Somebody told me she doesn't read the winners and losers. I don't know that I would. Sometimes there's finishes that are convoluted, and you kind of need to know what the plan is. But you know what, it's working for her so far, if that's what she's doing. I think she's found a way to put emotion into ring announcing like I've not heard anybody be able to do before. There's been a lot of women ring announcers, Mike McGurk and Lillian Garcia. There's been Dasha Fuentes. There's been male ring announcers. We all know the names, the Howard Finkles, Gary Michael Capetas of the world, Justin Roberts. But I don't think anybody's found a way to put emotion into introducing a match like she is, especially with those in-ring intros in the championship matches. She's onto something special. And I just said this on another interview, and they asked me about Samantha, and I get asked about her a lot, and for good cause, because she's really catching fire. But I don't know what her end game is. I know that she's a musician and singer, and if take this and do it for a couple of years and then get a gig as cut an album or become an actress, But if she does this for any long period of time, she's going to become a legend in this business. And even if she does it for a short time, she's already made herself in this business. She does a fantastic job. And she's done something that nobody else has figured out how to do or even thought about doing, probably. So kudos to her.
Yeah, absolutely. David, do you have a few more minutes, or you're up against the clock here?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, yeah. Well, there's just a lot of storylines back in WCW that I would like to just kind of know what it's like to be in the building. And of course, you mentioned that last matchup in WCW. I guess how long did you guys know that I guess that the company was being sold? I mean, how quick of a transition this was? As it's historically kind of written, you look back and people say, well, the booking wasn't quite as solid, near the end or whatever. But I mean, was the writing? When did the writing become on the wall?
When Eric Bischoff was buying the company with Fusant Media, they were in their due diligence period. I knew some change, because obviously if they're selling the company, things are going to change. I never in a million years thought that that they'd get rid of the company and for pennies on the dollar and cancel the shows until the weekend before the last Nitro was really found out. So I didn't have a lot of time to prep for it, and probably a good thing, because knowing that my career might be over, luckily that didn't happen, but knowing my career might be over probably wasn't something that would have been good to know and walk around and have to deal with longer than a few days. So and in hindsight, if you read Guy's Nitro book, in hindsight, even if the company fire, at once Ted Turner lost his control of the company with all the mergers. They were going to get rid of it. They didn't want wrestling. They never wanted wrestling. Ted Turner kept that company alive against the wishes of almost everyone in the Turner Broadcasting world. And so it was inevitable that once, we gave them an excuse because we were falling apart financially and talent-wise, but stories. But in hindsight, knowing what I know from reading that book, we didn't have a chance. Even if we were still number one and making hand over fist money, they were going to find a way to get rid of it. They didn't want it.
Well, it's interesting too, and we mentioned AEW coming back to TNT earlier. In The Rock even has mentioned this in his return to WWE, was like wrestling's cool again, and that's what you kind of think about when you think about WWE and WCW and the Monday Night Wars. Were like these characters. They weren't just like wrestling fans knew about them. It was they were just kind of in the mainstream culture where you could mention them and people would know what you're talking about. Do you think wrestling can get back to that?
Well, it's a different world. I mean, there was no internet. There was or very, very stage of internet. There was no Twitter. There was no Facebook. There was no, social media to speak of. So I don't think it'll ever get that big. But I mean, it's pretty darn big right now. I mean, this WrestleMania, and I'm sure they set all kinds of records and numbers, and can't even imagine how many people watched it. It was so well set up, and that main event on night 2 was so well delivered with all the run-ins and everything. It was one of the finishes that I could remember, and obviously everybody was satisfied because everybody wanted Cody to win, finish the story. But yeah, I think WWE is hitting on all cylinders with what they're trying to do right now, and they're trying to do now is not what they were trying to do when Vince McMahon was in charge. And you could say that's good or bad. Without Vince McMahon, there's probably no WrestleMania. There's probably no WCW as a national entity, and there's no Me in the Business. So, has he obviously, I think time got a hold of him, and he didn't really update his ideas as time progressed of what fans wanted to see. And obviously he did some despicable things, at least he's accused of. But I think they're for what they want to do. I think they're rolling on all cylinders. I think for what AEW wants to do, they're rolling on all cylinders. I didn't see it, but I heard Bryan Danielson against Will Ospreay was like, and that's what Tony wants that to be. They want it to be match quality and less storytelling, and whether that is going to work or not. I guess if you have a father who's a billionaire, or he's a billionaire too, and he's not just mooching off his dad. He has his own companies and stuff. But if you're a billionaire, I guess you could you could do what you want to do. And if you don't make as much as if you want to do another style, it's not the end of the world. So good for him. Tony's a great guy, and he's a wrestling savant, man. He can remember everything down to the detail. I mean, it's incredible. I don't know if you remember triple cage, 3-story cage. It was in Tupelo, Mississippi. It was like 8 guys. I think they brought in Zeus and against Hogan and Savage. Okay. And so I was talking to Tony after one of the Impact tapings during COVID, when he would come with what's his name held the title, Kenny Omega. And and I mentioned, he mentioned that match. I think Jeep Swenson, who was in that match, who was like, was a wrestler for about a minute and a half in World Class back in the day, in their heyday. And I said, I remember when Jeep Swenson was in that 8-on-2 triple cage match in Tupelo. And I was like really proud of myself that it was in Tupelo, Mississippi, because I go to a different place every night. How am I going to remember that? Somehow I remember that. And he looked at me and he said, and he wasn't doing it to show off. He was doing it because that's what his passion is. He named the name of the show. He named the year and the in, and he named every match on the card.
Man, he's really got it. You're not wrong then. He's really got it locked in up there.
No, there was this one time that for the Kenny Omega switch where Kenny Omega won the belt in the empty COVID arena. I was wearing a bow tie and cummerbund set that I had worn at Starrcade, Hulk versus Sting, and he walked by me in the building before the show, and he stopped dead tracked, and he said, "Starrcade, Sting versus whatever the year was, 97, 96, Sting versus Hulk." And I was like, "Tony, how did you know that?" He said, "I just know these things, David." I said, "You sure do, man." It's crazy.
That is incredible. And it's interesting too, because we had on a different show, Adam Carricker had Goldberg early on this week, and he mentioned that he thinks AEW is too cheesy. I don't know if that's necessarily, he said he's basically wouldn't consider going back there. But I did want to ask you about Goldberg, because you were obviously there for the streak and all that. Was that when he came in? Was that the plan, or did that just kind of naturally happen? At some point, you say, let's just keep this guy rolling.
I always say the best things that happen in professional wrestling, everything is organic. I'll give you Russo Day as an example. The Russo Day started organically and really got over, despite what the company at the time wanted to happen. But Goldberg was totally organic. Doing short matches just because he was fresh out of the power plant. So he'd do a 1 minute, 2 minute match, spear and the thing on your head. And it just started getting over. And so I think Mike Tenay came up with the streak, started counting how many matches that it was at house shows and TVs. And, it just grew from there. It was totally organic. I don't think anyone would tell you with a straight face that, we knew that was going to happen. We were just trying to get a guy that had some charisma and some raw talent out on TV and see what happened. And for some reason, it just went crazy. And Bill, Bill's a good guy. I haven't seen Bill in a little while, but the last time I saw him, he's a super nice guy and never let it go to his head when he easily could have.
Yeah, he seems very down to earth. And we talked a lot about WCW. I did want to quickly kind of ask you about your run in TNA, where you were the announcer from 06 to 2010, and then most recently, Impact TNA from 2020 to 2023. There was one specific thing that I read, that you got a Kurt Angle ankle lock, and Kurt Angle actually hurt you in performing that stunt. But Angle's one of my favorite, especially his intro music and just people get going there. How did Kurt Angle hurt you in the match?
It was the elbow to the face.
Oh yeah, I can imagine.
He later on told me that if he's being honest, he was afraid I wouldn't sell it, because I didn't know how to sell. He didn't know if I knew how to sell. And so he laid it in a little bit. Well, for Kurt Angle to lay it in, when Kurt Angle's working, Kurt Angle's laying it in for him. So I look like the Elephant Man. There's pictures out there on Twitter of what I look like. And, the ankle lock was easy. It was the elbow to the face. And then he took off my shoes and he started hitting my head. And he told me to cover my face with my hands so they would be hitting my arms and my hands, but somehow he connected with the other cheek. So one cheek exploded from the chair, from the dress shoes, and then the other one was from the he gets embarrassed every time I see him, but he's super cool about it. And, he apologized, but I don't know that in hindsight he'd have done anything differently.
Yeah,
I mean, that's just the kind of guy he is. He wants it to register, and if he didn't think I was going to sell it right, now I wish we could have gone over it so more, so he could have seen I could sell it right. But if he had a doubt in his mind, I think he'd have done the same thing, even if it was 10 years later. That's he takes it serious. He's a legit wrestler, obviously world champion, Olympic champion, and those aren't easy to come by, gold medals. So he was sympathetic, and he always gets when I see him and I bring it up, but I'm not sure he wouldn't do the same thing again.
Absolutely fantastic stories from David Penzer. Once again, he's got a book teamed up with Guy Evans for Sitting Ringside Volume 1. You might have mentioned this real quickly. Volume 1 implies there's a Volume 2. Is that more on Guy's side, or is there going to be more from yourself and perhaps a Volume 2?
No, we ended up the end of WCW, as I say, and then we pick up, go heavily into the XWF. Always wonder about that, and I was pretty much involved in every facet of that company.
Mm.
So we go into that. I have a lot of cool stuff from the formats and different things from the XWF. So there'll be a bunch of another couple hundred bonus, really cool, never before seen items, and then we go into TNA. Obviously, talk a little bit about my podcast and my last run with Impact, and we haven't done the second part yet, but so I don't know exactly how it's going to end. But Guy is a wonderful writer, and I'm sure he'll find a way to make it as good as it could be.
Well, I think that's part of wrestling, right? Is you start a feud, you don't necessarily know where it's going to end, but you just kind of let it play out and then see where it takes you. So I'm very excited to that. Would encourage anybody, if you like these stories, if you want to know more, like you said, just some of the stuff that's going to be in there from WCW and back in the day. David, I could talk to you for about 2 hours, but I don't want to take up too much of your time. But it's been a lot of fun to talk to you. Once again, David Penzer, longtime WCW, TNA, and Impact ring announcer with his new book, Sitting Ringside, Volume 1. One last shout out on where to go get that book, David.
You can get it at Amazon.com, or you could get that and expanded packages at davidpenzerbook.com, all one word, davidpenzerbook.com. It's free shipping either way. So it's if you want the extras, or you're interested to see what the extras are, you might want to go to David Penzer Book. If you just want to get the book and you're sold, you can go to Amazon and do it that way. But I appreciate you having me on, and if whoever reads the book, hey, let me know. Also, that you could join me on this crazy journey in professional wrestling on Twitter at David Penzer, all one word. So love for you to join me on Twitter, and what you think of the book if you read it. You could give me your honest assessment. I'm a big boy. I've been around the wrestling business 30 years, and a bad review is not going to hurt my feelings.
Well, there you go. I'm excited to jump into the book and read from those stories and give you a follow and join along as we all move forward with wrestling. Thanks once again, David, for joining us.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, there he goes. There's David Penzer. Once again, longtime wrestling ring announcer for WCW and TNA. It was a joy to kind of break down his book and some of the stories that he had going on there. Once again, this is Nuclear Heat here on 93.7 The Ticket. Got knocking on the door. I better wrap up pretty quickly. They're not really knocking on the door, but I am overdue on my time. So very quickly, I will wrap up my final thoughts from Raw, as we kind of had we kind of worked with David there and get his time in, get his thoughts in. Kind of a different episode of Nuclear Heat this go around, but definitely worth it. Real quickly, at the ending of Raw, you had Chad Gable's promo where he basically called out the Alpha Academy and basically challenged him. He said they're all kind of failures. He was upset, obviously, with what had gone on in the Intercontinental title picture and championship, was explaining why he turned on Sami Zayn, and he's just overall frustrated. I mean, you can tell, and he's just doing a really good job. Remember, Alpha Academy was a heel faction at one point in time, and they've kind of gone the other way and been a comedy act. But I'm interested to see where they go with that. A lot of these factions that have been long kind of staples of the last year or two of WWE have a lot of turmoil and maybe changing. And it's, I think at times wrestling companies, WWE can do that too quickly, so you don't get enough time with the group to really care whether they're breaking up or not. But whether it be Imperium or the Bloodline or Alpha Academy, obviously, just all these groups, I think they've done a good job of keeping them together long enough for these breakups to mean something. Let's go to the final couple matches there. Ricochet and Andrade defeated JD McDonough and Santos Escobar. And this was with Dominic not being able to fight, so Santos went in his stead to go out and fight in that match. They continue to push Andrade, though. At the end, Damian Priest comes out and wipes out Ricochet and Andrade. again, because they just went through a match and got the win. They're tired. They're a bit protected there. Either way, you want Damian Priest standing tall. But that was just kind of to tell the story that Damian Priest told JD McDonough and Dominic Mysterio afterwards that I don't need you, you need me, as part of their group Judgment Day. So be interesting to see where that goes forward. We've been saying it for weeks. Like, I get it. You need your guys in the group to take the pins. So you need kind of an order there. But at some point they need to push McDonough and Dominic Mysterio to make them a little bit more viable in my mind, just to make that group a little bit more viable. But it seems like they're going the opposite way. And so we'll see in the coming weeks how Damian Priest wants to deal with that. Then we had the women's championship up for grab in a battle royal. Becky Lynch ultimately wins this thing with Liv Morgan coming in second. Beautiful part about all of this, I don't know, I think beauty is the word, but the beautiful part about all of this was, you had so many women in the ring that weren't in the middle of feuds, because you're just kind of rolling off of WrestleMania, that it was like, okay, well, maybe they're going to push somebody, or maybe they're going to start something here. They ultimately didn't. I mean, I think if you went into this match, you would have probably had Becky Lynch, Liv Morgan, and Nia Jax as the likely three remaining contenders. The only bit of storytelling they did have was Maxine Dupree eliminate Candice LeRae and Indy Hartwell. So I think that kind of helps their little storytelling moving forward. Interesting that Piper Niven got eliminated and then really went on the attack on Becky. Maybe something there. Maybe that's going to be a fresh feud for Becky as she won this battle royale. And I think that was the right move. A lot of people kind of thought, I don't know about a battle royale for the championship. Doesn't seem, maybe for number one contenders type of thing. But I think if you're going to do Becky Lynch, ultimately, if you're going to do Becky Lynch, I think this was a good format, a fine format. As I've mentioned before, love battle royales. So basically, you could do this every week, and I would never get tired of it. It's always fun. But some people don't think it's the best way to determine a champion. You could have went with this long, drawn-out tournament or something like that. But if you're ultimately going to have Becky win, then you might as well just get right to it, because I think this is their 7th time as a world champion. So kind of the specialness of the moment doesn't need to be drawn out. And she makes sense, for a few different reasons. Obviously, long term, you're going to want to see when Rhea Ripley returns, is she going to come back after Liv Morgan? Is she going to come back after the title? If Liv Morgan has the title, that would kind of tell you, you could put that all in one story. So would that be more of an immediate return from Rhea? Because they gave it to Becky, I think maybe they're extending that, but Liv very easily could have an argument to try to take on Becky Lynch. And maybe if they want Liv Morgan to win it, maybe it'd be better for her to win a one-on-one match with Becky, which she hasn't done for the title, rather than just win a battle royale. So very interesting stuff this week. And I just wanted to do quick reviews of what went down in SmackDown and Raw to cover our Nuclear Heat guidelines that we normally do. But that will wrap it up for Nuclear Heat this week. Once again, thank you to David Penzer, longtime wrestling ring announcer for WCW and TNA. He's got his new book, Sitting Ringside, Volume 1, out now. Go to Amazon or davidpenzerbook.com, I believe is what he said, to go ahead and get that. A lot of good WCW stories in there. That'll wrap it up for Nuclear Heat. We'll be back next week on 93.7 The Ticket.